Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. What's up, you guys? It's Kirsten, and today we are diving into something that can completely transform your intimate experience: foreplay. Now, you might be thinking, I already know about foreplay. It's some kissing, a little second base, breast graze, and we're off to the races. But here's the thing. Most often, you are likely barely scratching the surface of what is possible. Today, we are about to explore 5 elements that you can add to your foreplay that will not only turn her on more intensely, but create deeper connections and more profound pleasure for both of you. A lot of the time, foreplay might feel like it's just for her, or it's something that you have to do in order to get to the good stuff. And I think that today is where that ends. I want to pose this question for you. What if foreplay was something that you enjoyed too? So with that, take a moment and be sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode, and leave a comment below. Connect with the other great men who are here and support one another along the way. Okay, you guys, let's get some. Before we dive into these 5 elements, I want you to understand something really crucial. Arousal for women isn't just about physical touch. It's about creating an experience that engages her entire being, her body, her mind, and her emotions. And if you're like, safety, what? Check out the episode released a while ago that is all about creating safety with a woman. These techniques aren't just going to be about physical stimulation, they're also about creating an environment where your woman can fully surrender to pleasure. The first element is what I call the anticipation game. Getting scientific for a moment here. When you build anticipation, you are actually triggering your dopamine system. That's right, because every time you hint at what's to come, you're actually creating a little dopamine hit in both of your brains. And here's the really wild part. Studies have shown that anticipation can actually be more pleasurable than the reward itself. It's why planning that vacation has proven to be just as fulfilling as actually going on the trip itself. It's why that moment right before a kiss can be more exciting than the kiss itself. You know how they say that people love the chase? It's likely because of this anticipation and the literal dopamine that pumps through the body and the brain as a result. You can create that chase, that anticipation, even if you've been together for a while. In this first element of foreplay, I am talking all about building tension, whether that's through lingering looks across the room that make her heart race, or the way that you brush past her in the kitchen, letting your hand lightly graze her hip. It's that moment when your hand rests on her lower back as you're walking together, guiding her through the door, letting her know, creating that really primal experience of, hey, I've got you, that she is going to feel. Or even the text message that you send that hints at what's to come. And this obviously goes both ways, but I'm thinking of tools to provide you with. So knowing that a woman can help increase this anticipation game as well. Now, here's what's in it for you. You're like, okay, Kirsten, I'm doing all of these things for her. I thought that foreplay was supposed to be for me too. So when you master this anticipation, you're not just turning her on earlier, you're actually increasing your own arousal too. That slow build of sexual tension is going to make your eventual release so much more intense. Think of it like charging up a battery. The longer you charge the battery, the more power that you're going to have when you finally let loose. Plus, when you build anticipation all day long, you are training your body and your brain to stay in that sweet spot of arousal without tipping over the edge too quickly. This naturally helps with stamina and control. I mean, you are literally practicing edging throughout your day. So allowing yourself to ride the wave of this arousal and this anticipation too. Now, you might be thinking, staying present sounds great, but what if I'm afraid I'll get too excited and lose control? What if this sense of anticipation, this edging that I'm experiencing through this anticipation becomes overwhelming to me. So let's talk about this because it's a real concern for a lot of men. First, understand that this fear actually creates a cycle. So if you get worried about allowing yourself to live in the moment, allowing yourself to be in the experience of riding this wave of turn on of pleasure, even in the foreplay portion of your sexual experience, you're getting worried about getting too excited. So you ultimately disconnect from the moment. Maybe your mind goes somewhere else. Maybe you focus on something that actually heavily decreases your overall sexual experience. This actually makes you less aware of your arousal levels and more likely to lose control. If you are not aware of what's actually happening, you will have less control over what is going to come. This is where the second element of foreplay comes in, and that is what we call graduated presence. Instead of diving deep into every sensation, begin by focusing on less arousing aspects. So if you're in that sexual experience, focus on the temperature of the room. How hot or how cold is it in the room? Focus on the sound of her breathing, or maybe a sound that's present in the room. Focus on actually the weight of your own body or the texture of her skin in maybe a non-erogenous zone. So maybe what does the texture of her forearm feel like or her bicep? Focusing on things that are in the present moment, but might not necessarily be related to something that you know is going to increase your arousal. And then gradually include more intense sensations as you build your tolerance for pleasure. It's like building a muscle, right? You don't start with the heaviest weights, you start with the lighter weights and build your way up. Now, you can also try this technique called arousal surfing. So when you feel yourself getting too excited, resist the urge to panic and disconnect, and instead imagine your arousal like that wave. Notice where you feel it in your body. Breathe deeply into that sensation and then actually spread the sensation and your breath throughout your entire body instead of letting it concentrating in likely your genitals. So let's say that you're in this anticipation game and you send that text message of being sexual playful and you get something back in reply and you become highly aroused in that moment. So instead of pushing it down, how can you breathe into that sensation? And then as you exhale, actually imagine that you're sending that sensation out to throughout your entire body, to the tips of your toes, to the tips of your fingers. This actually works with your body's natural arousal patterns instead of against them. Also, when you stay present instead of checking out, you'll start to recognize your own signs of approaching the point of no return much earlier, so that you can then ride that wave longer and longer. And I'll give you one more tip for this second element of graduated presence. When you feel yourself getting way too excited, you want to begin to shift your focus to giving pleasure rather than receiving it. So for a moment, shift from what is my physical experience to what is my partner's physical experience. This maintains that connection that you are creating, whether it's in the very beginning stages of foreplay or moving towards that climax moment. This enables you to maintain that connection while naturally regulating your arousal. It's like a pleasure release valve that keeps you in the game while letting you cool down a bit. Stepping into your experience, and then when it begins to become too much, instead of thinking about your grandmother eating cereal, focus on what is my partner experiencing right now. So the third element is what I call the full body experience. This is all about exploring not just the traditional erogenous zones of a woman, but bringing in her entire body. Let me break down exactly why these often overlooked areas are actually so powerful. So we're going to start with the back of her neck. Okay, this area is truly packed with sensitive nerve endings that connect directly to the vagus nerve, which is one of the main highways of arousal in the body. Plus, it's a vulnerable area. So when she lets you touch her here, it's building trust and surrender. And a little side note, if you ever see someone holding on to their neck, some body language experts show that, oh, this person is actually feeling vulnerable right now. Exploring some light massaging of the neck exploring even just placing your hand on her neck while you're kissing, while you're touching the rest of her body. Second, the scalp. Okay, the scalp is fascinating. When you massage it, you're not just hitting nerve endings, you're actually increasing blood flow throughout the entire body. So those little tingles that she gets, they're triggering the release of oxytocin and actually lowering cortisol levels in her body. Plus, a gentle scalp massage can create these delicious full body shivers that are going to wake up her entire nervous system. So you can do this by lightly massaging her scalp while you kiss, while you cuddle, while you talk, or even getting a little bit more intense with it, maybe some light hair pulling. If you have enjoyed this experience, I'm sure you know what it feels like, and giving that to your partner is going to enliven her entire being. Third part of the body that is so often overlooked is actually the inside of her wrists. Now, this might seem random, but they're what we called a pulse point. So the skin here is incredibly thin, making the nerve endings extremely sensitive. Plus, when you touch or kiss here, you're close to her pulse, which actually creates this primal sense of vulnerability and connection. And then two more. So behind her knees, again, you're like, behind the knee, that's not sexy. Let's think again. This is really actually a hidden erogenous zone that most people completely miss. And this area has a high concentration, again, of nerve endings, but rarely gets attention, which makes it actually extra sensitive. And it also connects to the same nerve pathways that run to her inner thighs and her sexual center. Finally, spreading her inner thighs. This area is truly rich with nerve endings that connect directly to her clitoral network. So remember how we talked about in previous episodes, those vestibular bulbs? The inner thighs are like the doorway to her entire pleasure system. So when you spend time here, you're literally waking up her entire arousal network before you even touch her intimately. So thinking about engaging in all of these kind of secret, lesser known parts of her body during foreplay and watch how she responds. These areas really truly work together to create what is considered arousal mapping. So you're basically creating a full body network of pleasure that makes every touch more sensitive. And what ends up happening is as you are bringing online her entire body, she is going to become more engorged, more wet, more aroused, which actually makes your experience when you enter her so much juicier, wetter, and more enjoyable. The fourth element of foreplay that we are talking about today is the energy dance. And this is about creating waves of intensity. So think about it like this. In the overall experience of the foreplay, start soft and gentle. And over time, build intensity slowly. And then pull back. Just when she thinks you're going to keep escalating, pull back. And this creates that incredible, delicious tension of making her want more. And then you build again. And then you pull back. Again, it's like this anticipation, this ebb and flow, this rise and fall. And the more cycles that you repeat that, the more that both of you are going to be turned on and excited and in pleasure. And this isn't about teasing. It is about understanding that arousal really works like waves, not just a straight line up. And the fifth and final element today that is so crucial, it's the mental connection. This is where you engage what many people consider the largest sex organ, which is the brain. This can be in the form of verbal expression. We're talking dirty talk here. We're talking sweet nothings here, whispering in her ear what you love about her body, telling her how much you want her, describing what you're going to do next, asking her what she wants. Bringing online the mental piece of this is really going to help, again, activate arousal and introduce something a little bit different into your exchange if this isn't something that you already do. Here's what's key about this element is that it truly has to be genuine. Look, we can all smell fake a mile away. So this is not about putting on a show. It's about expressing your authentic desires. So really speak from your truth. So those are the 5 elements that I wanted to share with you today. Now, let's take a moment and talk about what might be holding you back from actually implementing these into your foreplay. Maybe you feel awkward about going slow. Maybe you are worried that you're going to do or say something wrong. Maybe you feel this pressure to perform, or you're really focused on the end goal from the very beginning. Here's the truth. The more present that you are, the more she is going to respond. The more you enjoy the journey, the more she'll open up to pleasure herself, which in turn is going to create more pleasure for you. Let me give you a couple of really specific examples that incorporate some of these elements. So instead of diving straight into just touching her breasts or touching her clit right away, try this. Start with light touches on her arm while maintaining eye contact. Move to kissing her neck while your hands explore her lower back. Maybe let your breath actually tickle her ear as you tell her how beautiful she is. Gradually work your way to more intimate areas. I had Susan Brandt on the show a while back, and she talked about foreplay and arousal really as this target, this bullseye, right? You start on the outside and you work your way in eventually to the clit, to the vulva. You're honing in on your target here. With all of that said, here is your challenge. I dare you to pick one of these elements to focus on the next time that you enter into a sexual experience. Don't try to implement everything all at once. Instead, stay present with that one single element and notice what changes. And guys, here's the beautiful thing. When you can master these elements of foreplay, you're not just giving her more pleasure, you're creating the kind of intimate experience that keeps her thinking about you all day, that gets her to want more of you, to feel more deeply connected to you. And who doesn't want more of that? So before we wrap up, I want to emphasize one last piece. This is not about performance. It's about connection. When you step into your next sexual experience, ditch that I gotta perform for her, and instead put your goal and your focus on how can I become more present? How can I be here in this moment with her right now? Because it's really about creating experiences, yes, that are memorable and meaningful for both of you. And if you've been listening to this and you're like, okay, these are awesome, but actually my partner or the woman that I'm with right now, she tends to rush through foreplay. She's like, let's just get to it. And that might actually be a sign that she needs more foreplay, not less. So think about it like warming up for a workout. The person that says, let's just start playing is often the one who needs warm up the most. And your job isn't to match her rush, but to create enough safety and pleasure that she naturally wants to slow down and feel more. And when foreplay is rushed, when a woman is rushing through arousal, there isn't a lot of time, physical time created from the beginning of the experience to the part of actually having traditional intravaginal intercourse. So I'll just get really scientific with it there. A woman is often not actually getting fully engorged. And there are parts of a woman's body that need time to literally fill with blood to maximize pleasure. So when you help her slow down, when you slow down the foreplay process, you're literally creating the physical conditions for more intense orgasms for her and likely for you. That's what we're here for. So that's all for today. And if you found this helpful, please take a moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review. If you have questions about relationships, about sex or connection, dating, any of it, please send them over to thenakedconnection.com/question. And until next time, let's get some. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star